Hey, hey family, my name's Emma. I'm an alcoholic. Hey y'all. Coming at you from Beach Park, Illinois, which if you're familiar at all with the Midwest is like 10 minutes south of the Wisconsin border. So anybody from Wisconsin, hey. My sobriety date is November 26, 2013. I just celebrated 8 years sober last Friday. That is can we swear in this meeting? That is a fucking miracle. I'm actively sponsored by Tamara S. from Chicago. I actively sponsor other people. I don't just sponsor people that identify as women. Two of my sponsees are in this meeting, and they can tell you that. There's a lot. My home group. If you're ever in Illinois sometime on a Friday night, my home group is the Friday night 10 p.m. meeting at the Day by Day Club in Highland Park, Illinois. It's an in-person meeting, and there is no structure, and we get wild, and I love that meeting because it's full of newcomers to help. So, if you're ever in Highland Park, Illinois on a Friday night at 10 p.m., get my number, hit me up. We'd love to have you. This is the second time I've spoke tonight. I just spoke at a 7:00 meeting Central Time. I did not plan that. And, I was just going to tell my story. I want to take a minute to thank all of you for showing up tonight. I want to take a minute to celebrate all the people counting days. I'm going to point out Anne with 1 day. That's amazing, and everybody celebrating days. Congratulations. Keep coming back, and I'm going to give you my experience, strength, and hope. And I'm going to incorporate a bunch of AA principles in it. And some of them will be subtle and some of them will be obvious, but, just about me. And I'm in a very structured sponsorship line. My sponsor teaches me all 36 principles, which is the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and the 12 concepts of AA. And I just want to raise your hand if this is not your first time in AA and you've relapsed a bunch of times. Because my story's for you, because I was in and out of this program from the age of 19 to 29 for 10 years. Because I couldn't quite get it. So if you're anything like me, my story's for you. I'm now 37 years old, and I'm still technically young because I got room to grow. I have been actively involved in the Illinois State Conference of Young People in AA for the last 7 years. So most of my sobriety, I'm humbled to be in a young people's group. It's because of young people's that I stuck around this time. It's because of young people's service that I found I helped create the fellowship that I crave. When I first came around when I was 19 in frickin' 2004, I was the youngest one, and I heard a lot of I spilled more than you drank and shit like that. And it was, it really made me feel apart from, and I didn't know anything about young people's back then, so I'm not saying that's the reason I didn't stay sober. I honestly think is because I wasn't done doing research, and I also didn't do the work. I didn't work the steps. I didn't get a spiritual awakening. So obviously I, didn't stay sober. And, it also when I first came in at 19, I was never explained to me what alcoholism was and what an alcoholic is, and that's really important. That's one of the first things I do with new people, in an ideal world, I know we're in a pandemic right now, but I still go to some in-person meetings. If there's a new person, brand new meeting, first time, or back from a relapse, I'll sit down with them if they have time. Yeah, I'm one of those that will come at you if you're new in the rooms, and I'll open a big book and I'll flip it to the doctor's opinion, and we'll talk about what alcoholism is according to the doctor's opinion. And alcoholism is categorized by two things in the big book. It's an obsession, a mental obsession to drink or use drugs, and drugs are a big part of my story. story, and it's a physical allergy, so that whenever I take alcohol and drugs in my body, I lose my choice of how much, when, where, who I end up in bed with, how many clothes I take off, like if I get arrested or not, like that's all out the door. I also lose choice in like what relationships I nourish. Part of my story is that like I was 21 when I had my son, and for 11 years he wasn't in my custody because of untreated alcoholism and untreated mental health. I'm also dually diagnosed. Just like to throw that in there for people like me that don't hear about it a lot in AA. And I could tell you a lot about what untreated looks like and what sobriety looks like in the rooms, because that's been a lot of my experience in the last 8 years, because the reality is my life is awesome. Like it's never been so good, but that doesn't mean I feel like it's good all the time. I'm alcoholic. I'm a slave to my emotions and the way that I feel, so just because like my bills are paid and like, my son and I have our health, and, like I feel like my world is ending because I can't, there's stuff I want that I can't have, or like because of, sacrifice I have to make, or I had a hard day at work, or this relationship isn't going the way I want it to, like my emotional state is subject to change all the time, but I have spiritual tools to combat that, right? So I'm not going to talk too much about my drinking and drugging because it's all pretty much the same. But what I will tell you is that, alcohol wasn't the problem. It was my solution, alcohol and drugs, until it didn't work anymore. And it got to a point where I hated myself and I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and I just wanted to die all the time, and I felt like there was no way out. And for me, having been in and out for 10 years, I knew AA was there, but like that was the last place I wanted to go to make my life better, I wanted to practice my will and take control of my life, and I didn't want to believe that I had to give it up to something greater than myself. And I almost killed myself and others, like chasing that dream that I could have control of my destiny and my alcoholism, But like fast forward, I got sober in 2013 and something happened that day. November 26, 2013 is the last day I used. That's what I claim as my sobriety date. And something happened that day. It was that, I was, for anybody else that's like me, like in my youth and sometimes in sobriety, I was like super promiscuous. I don't even remember dude's name that I was dating at the time. But me and dude were smoking some stuff in my mom's garage, because like I live in my mom. And she caught us, and that had happened a million times before, because my mom had kept supporting me throughout all my relapses and stealing from her and stealing her debit card to go cop and stuff like that. Like she supported me. And this time when she caught me, she said something that she'd said before, like, how could you do this to me, after everything I've done? And for some reason, like I choose it to be divine inspiration, like God shot into me like a lightning bolt and said in a quiet voice in my head, like, you don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to hurt her and others anymore. And you could be, if you want to, a mother to your son instead of running away, So, because Bill talks about in his story, like he had a sudden profound impact, his spiritual awakening. And that's how it was for me the last day of my use. And whatever the fuck his name was, I dropped him off and I gave him all my paraphernalia and my drugs, and I ran straight to a meeting, and I've been there ever since. So that's my sobriety date. It has not been like all rainbows and unicorn farts the whole time. I've had a lot of great times. I've also had a lot of dark times in sobriety. My experience is that, when I'm physically sober, but I'm spiritually unwell in untreated alcoholism, I'm in more pain and I cause more pain than when I'm drinking and using drugs. And now I don't have the excuse that I was drunk or I was high. I don't have the excuse that I don't have control of myself, and those are hard amends to make, man, when you cause harm in sobriety. And it's very humbling. But I'll tell you, one of the first things I did in the first year of sobriety is I got involved in young people service in Iscypaa. I joined a BID. That's a group that wants to host the conference. Fancy talk. And And we eventually got to host that conference. And and in that time, I worked the steps for the first time to completion, finished a 4-step, did a 5th step, did all the following, and finally was able to sponsor people. And that was a difference between now and all the previous sobrieties for those 10 years that I tried to do, because I had never finished a 4-step and I had never, ever sponsored anybody. I wasn't willing to, because I thought I was too sick or I would mess somebody up. And what I've learned about sponsorship is like, you know, I'm more sick when I don't sponsor, because in working with others, it says, like, I'm paraphrasing, but the best way to stay sober is to work with another alcoholic. Like, that doesn't mean like I take all these gifts that I've been given and I hold on and say, I'm not going to sponsor. That's a sure way for me to drink and to die. And I have a couple of sponsees in this meeting right now, and like they keep me sober. Working with them like keeps me sober, being able to get out of myself, and listen to what's going on with them and help them on their spiritual journey that's what keep me sober, and I'm still involved with Iscypaa. I'm on the current host committee. We're super excited. And if anybody has experience in service work, like that's been a big part of my sobriety. And like that, service work in AA and at home are the two places I have to practice the steps, traditions, and concepts the most, because all of my defects come out mostly at home or in AA service. At work, I'm okay. Like, I've become employable. That's a miracle, because literally I had like 15 jobs in 2 years because I was not employable in sobriety, right? And I'm employable. I'm super blessed to have the job I have. And in service, like my baseline, okay, I'm alcoholic, right? So like, I also have a whole slew of other issues. If you want to know, private message me, we'll talk about it sometime. But like, some of my issues are like, I'm not going to go into depth, but I've suffered with a lot of stuff, like eating disorders, gambling problems, self-harm, like suicidal shit, like I've struggled with a whole lot of stuff. And in service, like, my baseline is that I don't want to do the work and I don't want to do anything. And most of the time I would like to stay in bed. And my baseline is also like, I want to be right and I want to have control of what's going on, because then I feel some sense of security, right? So like, when that happens in a service committee, the point of for me to be in a service committee is to be of service, to do God's work and help God's kids, But if I like go into this position that I have and I start like stepping out of my lane, because there are duties for a service position. If I go to and I step out of my lane and I start inputting what you should be doing and what they should be doing, and we should do it this way, because don't you know, my experience is the best experience, like, that's not very spiritual. And like, that behavior can actually make service unattractive for people that have never experienced it before. And that same behavior can make AA unattractive for somebody that's new or somebody that's coming back that's dying from alcoholism. My current sponsor taught me that like, I might be the only example of a big book that somebody ever meets, So like, I'm never going to be perfect, but like, I better be very careful who I break my anonymity to, because me acting a fool and acting super unspiritual could deny somebody the opportunity, like people at work, if I break my anonymity and I act super sick and take shit out on people, that might deny somebody like connected to somebody I work with a chance to get sober, because I might be the link that like somebody be like, if they find out I'm sober, like, oh my God, how'd you do it? Because sometimes it's as simple as that. We don't always just like, people that walk into AA meetings don't just always look up in a directory. A lot of time it's by referral or it's by rehab or being in jail, and like, I try to do my best to practice the tradition of attraction rather than promotion. And it's difficult sometimes because in my ego, like, I think I know what's going on. I think I know the right way to do things. Based on my experience and sometimes based on my opinion, based on feelings, right? I'm an alcoholic and I'm a slave to my emotions. But I've learned also in this sobriety that, like, especially with sponsees, like, it's absolutely deadly deadly to share my opinion. If they come to me with something and I haven't experienced it and I share my opinion, that is deadly. You know, I don't do that. My sponsor taught me that if I don't have that experience, I ask my sponsees permission to find somebody that does, to help them or refer them to somebody else, because I've been given this formula for how to live life based out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous through my sponsor. And like, when I try to put my own glitz and shine on it and my opinions on it, like, proof what works for me has worked for millions of other people. And that's really humbling, because like I said, I like to act like I know or look like I know what's going on. But some of the most humbling things that have happened in this sobriety as well is being able to say the words "I don't know" instead of "I know," or "Oh yeah," or I used to lie a lot. When somebody would ask me if I had heard of something, I would lie and say I had, so you'd accept me, because I just want people to like me. And I've learned to say, "No, I don't. Why don't you tell me about it?" And I've learned to ask questions and like be vulnerable that I don't know stuff, because it's okay to not know everything. And the longer that I've stayed sober, the more I realize I really don't know. you know it's interesting, because when I first got sober, I knew everything, and now I have a few years sober and like I really know nothing. I know what's in my experience, right? But I do know that, like, I don't know about you guys, but like I don't respond well to speakers that talk about how great their life is and like how they have all the things and the house and the white picket fence and the babies and stuff like that. Like, dude, like, I'll share real quick, like, what untreated alcoholism and sobriety looks like for me is having almost 4 years sober and getting arrested for prostitution. Having affairs with married men and getting mad when they go back to their wives, and then like being vengeful and like telling the wife all about the affair, which is like the absolute wrong thing to do if you're practicing spiritual principles. Um, and like, just living based on emotion and will, and like, stomping through relationships and demanding like I be emotionally taken care of, demanding these things. And I've learned, as much as I hate it, that like as long as I have a relationship with the God of my understanding, like no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. So if I'm looking for that guy or that girl to make me better, like my life won't be good until I have the marriage, the babies, the car I want, the job I want, the clothes I want, or until I move to this place. Like, that's all material shit. And I've learned that like whatever I put in front of my sobriety, I'm going to lose. And that's happened to me many times. Um, and I also, I'll quickly share, because I'm running out here. Like, one thing I've experienced a lot in this sobriety is grief. I lost my mom in 2017 from cancer. She was one of us. She was sober 10 years when she died. And I've lost a lot of people in the rooms. I've watched a lot of people die of this disease. My sponsorship family, I have a really big one. I have like 16 sponsee sisters and siblings. We just lost a former sponsee sister Thanksgiving, and her funeral is tomorrow, and I'm feeling some type of way about it. Like, I'm so grateful for the life I have and the gifts I have and the relationships I built, but this shit fucking sucks. Like, it sucks to lose people you love and watch them die of this disease. And it makes me question, like, why am I so fortunate? And I can't answer that question. um but I can tell you that like every day I get up and I ask God to like separate me from my ego, and start my day that way. It's a better day. And like when I practice the principles to the best of my ability every day, like I don't have to drink or use drugs, and I don't have to be another number. You know what I mean? Because like we've lost so many, and like I'm not guaranteed anything. I'm not guaranteed that if I work the steps, I'll stay sober for the rest of my life. But I'm guaranteed that if I wake up in the morning and I connect to the God of my understanding, and I continue to connect throughout the day when my day is hard, because my day often is, like, I don't have to drink, and if I work with another alcoholic, like I'm gonna be okay. Even if everything is taken from me, I still have my sobriety and my God. So I'm super grateful to be here tonight. You guys are amazing. I love you all. If nobody's told you that yet today, I love you. And with that, I'm done.